according to St. Matthew, the 24th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus said to the disciples, "About that day and hour no one knows, neither the angels of heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. For as the days of Noah were, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day of Noah entered the ark. And they knew nothing until the flood came and swept them all away. So too will be the coming of the Son of Man. Then two will be in the field, one will be taken and one will be left. Two women will be grinding meal together, one will be taken and one will be left. Keep awake, therefore, for you do not know what day your Lord is coming. But understand this: if the owner of the house had known in what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and would not have let his house be broken into. Therefore you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an unexpected hour." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Grace and peace to you from God our Father and Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. Flip. Did you hear that? Today marks the flipping of the Year C calendar. It's the year of Luke. And we flip to a new church calendar, Year A, the year of Matthew, and that starts today. This is a high paperwork time of year. And on top of all the end of the year stuff going on for the normal calendar year, which starts in January, right now every pastor and office administrator in a church, anyone who's following the lectionary, is flipping their church calendars to a new church year. And it's not just a calendar flip, it's a whole exchange of Year C books to change them over to Year A books. It's different websites and different devotionals. It's actually quite the ordeal. The Christian calendar begins with Advent. The secular calendar ends with Christmas. But Christmas to Christians is the beginning and not the ending. Yet as Christmas on the secular calendar is the ending and not the beginning, and a circle is created. A beginning and an ending of both sides of our lives happens right now. It happens today. Advent is a time of waiting and a time of wondering. And Christmas is a time of hurrying and busyness. And our circles intersect, causing confusion and a bit of tension. How can you slow down for the slow-moving Advent season, yet be in full speed ahead mode to get everything done before December 25th? For some who have had a recent loss, the time leading up to major holidays such as Christmas can be daunting and overwhelming. For others, this time serves as a time of joy and fun. For some, it is their favorite time of year, and for some, it is their least favorite time of year, and some fall in between that. Nevertheless, the circles of the season require balance and emotionally, financially, and mentally. Advent is supposed to be a time of preparing our hearts for the greatest gift we could ever be given, the gift of Jesus Christ. A child from a poor family who grows up to be a different kind of king. Though the Advent season is a time of waiting and preparing, it really is the busy time of the season. We have shopping to do, food and travel to plan, people to connect with, and things to order. And it is Christmas Day where we collapse in a huff and hope to have a day of conversation, meals, and for most of you, a day without having to work. The Advent season is a time of circles. It's a time of remembering. It is a bit of mystery thrown into an ordinary calendar year, a bit of excitement. See, we wait for the Christ child to be born, yet the circle of Christ's birth enters into the circle of Christ's death and resurrection. It's a time spectacular will happen. It's a time of remembering. Remembering that while we are waiting for Christmas Day to celebrate the Christ child, that all this has actually happened before. See, Christ has entered the world. Sometimes Christ bursts into a season without complaint, a season of quietness, a season of contentment. Sometimes the Christ child comes into a season of tension or frustration, sorrow or deep need. Sometimes Jesus is born at a season of beginning, and sometimes Jesus is born at a season of ending. Endings and beginnings. Advent is the season of life circles, intertwining and intersecting. Christ enters our human stories over and over again. Ending year C, beginning year A, ending 2019, beginning 2020. For all of you in the Zion community, today is the beginning of a new era and simultaneously the end of another time. In two of his last three sermons, Pastor Tom stated that there is a day after loss in the community, a day after retirement, and today is that day. Today is day one. It is both an ending and a beginning, and it is also that time in between. A time of waiting, a time of preparing, a time of looking forward, and at the same time, it is a time to pause and look back and give thanks and praise to God for a beautiful season of circles that encompass this community for the last 20 years. And the journey continues, and Zion continues, and on Christmas Day, just like last year on the same day, and the year before that, and 2,000 years before that, Jesus enters in, intersecting our lives, interrupting the program, and begging us for our attention. And today, here at Zion, Jesus enters the story. This story, this scene, this moment, this day one, this meantime. And we may not be in the mood for all of this today. Our hearts might be heavy. We miss Pastor Tom and Hannah Laura, and we may not be ready for the something new, even though it's familiar. We may not be ready for the meantime. Every year the Christ child comes into our presence. It is a season of meantimes and a season of circles, of endings, but there's always a season of beginnings. Sometimes the holidays, they just feel too much. We don't feel like celebrating for a long list of reasons. And even if we had a sad and sorrowful Christmas, God still comes. Whether or not we feel like it, whether or not we can afford it, whether or not we want to celebrate it, God still comes. And even in the toughest times when we want to mourn or to be angry, or we need to sit shell-shocked by the events of the season, a baby is born in a manger every single time. As a Christian people, we know that Jesus will come because Jesus is already here. Yet we celebrate the birth. We remember it. Remembering as we know it means to look back and to recall times or events or people. Remembering means to look back to a time before. It means thinking about events that you've already been through, the joys and the sorrows, the endings and the beginnings. But there's a concept called remembering, R-E, and then there's a dash, membering. You can see it as the opposite of dismember, which means to take something apart piece by piece by piece. The concept of remembering is putting those pieces back together in a way that makes us understand that the story is a part of our own story. It is a concept that we are all there when the fall of Adam and Eve occurred. And whatever you believe about that story, surely you can recognize your own sins. It's about celebrating Christmas and remembering Jesus entering our story. And however you feel today about the season, surely you recognize the difference that Jesus has made in your own lives, intertwining, intersecting your circles. In Holy Week, we remember the walk of Christ to the cross, allowing the sorrow to enter our lives today. This is necessary so that on Easter we also remember that Christ was resurrected and that we are born anew. We remember because our story today intertwines and intersects with all of creation. The floods, the commandments, and the baby king. Every time, year after year, a season of circles, a season of remembering occurs. These are the big events. But every Sunday we come to the table of grace and we remember all these things. We remember that Jesus was born and lived and died and rose from the dead for you, for your human story, for you today and for you yesterday and for you tomorrow. And here at Zion Lutheran Church, we take communion as a community. We create a circle at the altar. We receive forgiveness together. And while this moment is very personal, it is also about the saints who surround you at this table. The circle reminds us that we are not alone. We are never alone. And even in the tough times or the sad times or in day one, at least here we are a team. We are a community of saints whose church story intertwines and intersects with one another. And we won't do this alone. We'll support each other and we'll help each other. We'll pray for each other. And we will look back together. And we will give thanks. And we'll also look forward together as a community, as a team, with Jesus Christ as our guide. Jesus is the beginning of the circle, and Jesus is the end of one. Jesus comes at the beginning of a story and also at the ending of one. And we're always really in the meantime. Our lives are intersecting and intertwining. Today, here at Zion, we are at the ending of an era and also at the beginning of a brand new one. We are all in the season of circles together. We're all a part of the great story. And Jesus comes to remind us of that again and again and again. May your season of circles be filled with joy and peace and love and grace. And may you feel the presence of Christ Jesus intertwined with your own story today and every day. Amen.